that's why I said that when you are merging two businesses together, you need to hear how that other agent communicates with their clients and
Great point.
seeing that. I just
Yeah.
feel like being there and seeing it helps you understand much better how their business works.
Today's episode is brought to you by Andy Bovender, the founder of the Bovender team out of the Carolinas. Him and his team have helped more than 5,000 families. So if you have that client who's been thinking about making a move to or from that area, they are the referral partner to call. Today's conversation is with Jennifer Vick, and we talk about how she's acquired other agents' business. So if you're an agent who's thinking about maybe leaving the business in the next handful of years, this is a great episode for you to tune into. Or if you're the agent who's looking to acquire another agent's book of business, stay tuned. This episode is packed with a ton of great information that's technical and applicable. So stay tuned. And if you want to hang out more with past guests of the podcast or other agents who are like minded, really driven, and want to grow their business, take a look at the description below for the Inner Circle group. There's a link that'll carry you to the wait list. So just add your name to that. And with that shared, I'm your host and referral partner out of San Francisco, Shawn Kunkler. Jennifer, thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, I am thrilled to be chatting with you because you've acquired so many agents' business, and I'm sure your learnings are amazing. And I want to know, first and foremost, what's the biggest discovery you made, i.e., what's the biggest blunder that you learned from? But before we get in there, get to all of the meat and potatoes of it, in a couple sentences, would you mind sharing who you are and what you do?
Yes. So I am Jennifer Vick. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina, a Carolina girl, born and raised. I grew up in Greenville, South Carolina. Um, I have been in real estate almost 18 years, and I know that because I started right before my first daughter was born, when the market was really not so easy. So it
Yeah.
was nice to, I think that was what, 2007? It was nice to sell a couple houses when you were home with a newborn, right? Um, but I taught second grade for 7 years before that. That's what I went to school for, was to become a teacher, and teachers, as we all know, don't make a whole lot of money. And
Yeah.
when we were pricing daycare for our daughter, we were like, "This doesn't make sense on a $30,000 salary. It's all going to daycare." So I got my real estate license and never looked back.
That's incredible. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. But on the flip side, you started in a really tricky market.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I think, it was very slow, and, as most new agents start heavy on buyers, I worked with
Yeah.
buyers. And funny enough, I can think back my first buyer, I'm actually helping her mother sell a home right now so that her mother
Oh,
can move in with her. So I've now helped them with probably 7 transactions.
that's
Um
amazing.
And that's what I learned during that time is communication, right? Like, you
Yeah.
can't stop communicating because that's how you build relationships.
Yeah. And I think too, my opinion is, everybody's looking for the reviews online. The greatest honor you can have is somebody literally giving you their parent and saying help them. Like what a huge honor. I would never introduce my mom or my dad to anybody who I wasn't like, this person's solid. Like you're in good
Right,
hands.
right.
So like kudos and kudos for 7 other interactions with them, which is really huge. Which that parlays nicely, and I feel like this conversation is going to jump around a little bit because it's the nature of my ADHD. But within that, you have to obviously have systems in place to stay in constant communication with people, and that obviously parlays into acquiring another agent's business because the crux of that is going to be onboarding into systems and then putting them into your marketing campaign.
Mhm. And that's it. I think my teaching background, a teacher, you make lesson plans. And I think as a
Hmm,
real estate agent, we're kind of making lesson plans for each of our clients and,
true.
your business plan for the year. Everything has to be planned. And things
Yeah.
don't always go to plan. But what I found is when people get into the real estate business, sometimes they don't think through, like, what am I going to do to generate business? How am I going to stay in touch with people? What is
Yeah.
my system for that? What is my system for follow up? And you have to have all that documented and clear, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's the biggest piece is what I've told people in the past is if you don't have it written down and you don't know what your process or your system is, how would you expect to keep duplicating it or for someone else to repeat and duplicate what you're doing?
I mean, for lack of a better analogy, is if you go to a McDonald's on the East Coast and order a burger, it's the exact same burger as if you're in California. And that's, to your point, that's systems and process. And it's more fascinating. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Founder.
Mm-mm.
It's really good, but it's actually about McDonald's in its history. But there's an amazing, amazing, amazing scene where there's three guys and they're in a tennis court and there's kind of like an overhead shot and they have chalk on the tennis court and they're actually trying to figure out the most efficient way to make the different products on the menu without bumping into each other. And so what's fascinating about it is their goal was to not make fast food. It was is actually to make food fast. It in the future change to like lower grade of quality and greasy and fried and all that stuff. But originally it was efficiency. And to your point, it's that's all hinged on having a system that you can replicate.
That's right. Yeah. I think the other piece of that, and I may be getting ahead of you, is going back to the relationships, right?
Yeah.
If we're talking about acquisition, it's hard to acquire someone else's business or transfer a client to another person if you don't have that relationship. Because what I found is the agents that I helped move out of the business or move out of town to, start business in another place is we kind of had the same, I guess, ethics and what we believed in and the same type of communication style in a sense. I mean,
Mm,
my goal was always to either be similar to what they were doing or better than what they were doing.
yeah.
Because if your clients don't know and trust you, then are they going to be willing to move on with somebody else they don't know? Right.
That's totally true. And there has to be in I get it, like we're kind of jumping around a little bit, but the complexity of it is you have to first win over the agent that you're trying to acquire their business, and so you need to be in alignment with them. But to your point, educate them on your plan, your lesson plan. Like here's the lesson plan, and and then simultaneously those agents then have to nurture their clients to bring you into that fold. So there's it's complex. Do you, for that whole process, do you have a systemized process for all of those components? Hey, friends, I have a small favor to ask. For me to continue to bring you outstanding guests who share their best kept secrets for growing a successful real estate business, please take a moment and hit that like button so agents like you can find this content. And also hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss out on any new episodes. Now, back to our show.
I do. And you
Mm,
have to because it's not, a lot of people don't think through oh, I'm going to retire or I'm moving, right? And sometimes the moving part happens sooner than you would think, right? So I
yes.
think as agents, you have to be organized, have your systems in place. That's the first start, right? The first piece of it. But there's so much of getting to know the person who you're acquiring their business and vice versa, the person
Mm,
who's going to be, um, you know, taking the business or take caring for the clients, really understanding them, and that takes a lot of time. And then also going through and understanding who are the key players that they've worked with in the past, their past clients that are their core advocates, knowing them, understanding them, having the opportunity to meet with them. So it's not something that can just be like, here's a book of business, here are the
Yeah.
people I've worked with, good luck. Because then it's just
Yeah.
not meaningful.
Well, and I've had a similar experience. It just kind of crashes and burns
Yeah.
because the recipients, the clients, they don't feel the warmth of any handoff, and there's no I don't know what the right word or phrase is, but they're not brought up to speed appropriately, and so it's a cold lead, if you will, to the new agent coming in, and so they need to go to warm then to hot. And if it just, which was my experience the first time, was it just was like kind of dropped in my lap, and then I'm trying to warm them up, but then being like, oh yeah, by the way, this other person's amazing who you worked with, and I'm similar because it's a much harder experience. So I love that you got in front of all of that, which is hard.
Well, and let's be honest, in this day and age, as many real estate agents that are out there, everybody knows a handful, right?
Yeah.
So if the person that you had worked with to buy or sell 4 years ago, 5 years ago moved away, or you haven't heard from them in a long time, you may remember that your cousin just got their license. And so you're going to call them, right? But they're
Yeah.
probably not the best fit. So that warm introduction is so, so meaningful.
Yeah, my mind is racing in so many different directions. I have so many questions I want to ask you. When when you first make an approach with an agent or they approach you, what's usually the one thing or a couple things that they haven't done to prepare their business for any sort of handoff?
Organization. I think
Mm,
it's being organized in their CRM or how they're keeping up with their clients. The biggest piece is having notes in your CRM.
yes.
Anything that you could need to know about your clients. I mean, I even think about this now as I'm like in my 40s and I'm forgetting things from time to time to have notes
Oh,
or
it gets
notes.
better. Trust me.
Yeah, notes in my contacts of what was their child's name or where do they
Yeah.
work, those types of things that do make that meaningful connection. Or, the second acquisition I did was I was so impressed with his system. He had um emails and text messages saved in his CRM. So I could look back and see that communication, right? And that helped me know kind of what they talked about and gave me the details of that relationship. So then I could just step back or step into it
Yeah.
and already feel connected to that client because I knew so much about them. So those are the things I
Yeah.
think people don't think about. They put notes about the transaction but not about the person.
Yeah, you make a great point, and I definitely need to do better in that category because yeah, I've worked with clients who are like really hot and heavy and they're ready to go, and then all of a sudden their job changes and they need to relocate for 6 months. They put it down, then they come back, and you're like, wait, who were they pre-approved with? And I know they had a son, but what was the kid's name? And you just to your point, you can't retain or remember all that information. The other thing that now I've discovered, started discovering it probably a handful of years ago, is if I'm bringing somebody else on my team into the transaction, like, hey, I'm going to be traveling for the next 2 weeks. I would love to have you jump in. And I either need to give them a download or they can just read it. And it's far more efficient for me to not be there, especially if I'm not there and they can't get a hold of me. They then just have a place to go check.
That's
And
exactly
so,
right.
yeah, I can definitely see that being in having all these conversations and talking to enough team leads and knowing that most people are not spending enough time in their CRM. I can only imagine what hot mess most of us have.
Oh, that's the boring, consistent stuff that we're supposed to be doing, like having
Yeah.
that time to work really in your business or work. I guess it's working on the business if you're going in there and you're cleaning things up and you're making sure that you're documenting communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because I just had a conversation the other day with Alyssa, um, and we were joking and saying that we're marketers who happen to sell properties. And when you put those notes in your CRM and they're really robust, you can then really tailor the communication that's going to them. Because if they have a young child and a kid, you can tell them about the new park that just opened up. Whereas if they're retiring and thinking about relocating to Florida and selling their property, they don't care about that park. And so the right message to the right audience is it's paramount. And I
Absolutely.
would probably guess when you can then convey these things to an agent who you're looking to acquire, it helps them understand who you are as a marketer, as an operations person, as a facilitator for their clients.
That's right. And I think the key, what I've gathered from anyone who is ready to transition their business to someone else, is it's the people, right? They want to make sure
Always.
that their people are cared for. And
Yeah.
that's what you have to look for, someone who is client focused and relationship focused, because that's going to go the farthest, is
Yeah.
making sure that it's someone who's very relationship based.
And how do you uh, sorry, I'm again so many thoughts. This is a great. I love this. Um, when somebody's phasing out, it's usually on a long timeline. It's usually not, hey, I'm leaving tomorrow, take everything. And so within that, there's usually different scenarios. There's the client where they want to be far more involved. There's one they kind of want to be involved, and there's some that they're like, I'm hands off. How do you, or when do you kind of figure out those strategies? Do you do it as they come up, or do you have a plan in advance? What does that communication typically look like?
It's a lot of discussion beforehand, and you're basically asking that question: how involved do you want to be?
Mhm.
Um, And once you understand that and kind of how you're going to work cohesively or work on your own, then you make the plan from there.
Yeah.
So if they say, I want to be involved, or hey, I'd like to at least know what's going on or be able to talk to the clients from time to time, then that's kind of your action plan, right? You kind of know what that's going to look like when that handoff of a client is made or how that communication
Mm.
is between you and the new clients that you're gonna hopefully be working with. Um, I think with the acquisitions I did, they were all very, very different, and in a sense, the agents all did business in a similar way, but in a different way too. And the
Mm.
least successful was the completely hands off, because it was
Really?
like, oh yeah, it was, here's my book of business. I'm going to be leaving town, and that was it. So there was no warm handoff, and I think in a sense, when that other agent is still involved a little bit, it makes you look like a team. You feel cohesive, and yet
Yeah.
that agent doesn't really have a lot of work to do. They really are just being friends with the clients and being there as a support, and that's what we enjoy, right?
Yeah.
So, at least most of us do. So, I think that's the easy part. And eventually, yes, people do step out, but I think to solidify that transfer, I think it's meaningful when that agent can be somewhat involved.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. I mean, I'm reflecting on my own experiences, and there's been recently, I have a business partner, and I, on a few deals, I'm just kind of the face. Like I showed up for the initial consultation, signed the contract, and then Nancy just ran with all the other components. And if there was something really significant that I needed to get on a phone call, I did. But otherwise, we just kind of mapped it in advance. And I think, to your point earlier, when you communicate, like, here's my role, here's what I'm going to be taking care of, here's so and so, this is what they're going to be doing, here's our TC, this is what they're going to be doing. And, if at any point a problem comes up, just call me. I'm your point person. People are like totally fine with it.
It's setting the clear expectations, and if you can set
Yeah.
that and they know that they have that support if they need it, they're probably not going to call the person who's kind of stepped out, right? But I
It's
found
true.
it even really it goes a really long way with just that quick call of, "How are things going?" Or a
Yeah.
quick text, "I hear you're about to close and everything's gone great. I'm so excited for you." Because then you were still involved, and that took 2
Yeah.
seconds to do that?
And they also know that you're looking at everything. Like, even though
Yes.
you're not on top of them, you're still on all the emails, you're still reading stuff, you're still abreast of what's happening. You didn't just disappear or vanish. And I think that's the important part that to kind of like, that's what I discovered along the way, is there's different ways to be involved, and there's different ways to hand things off, to alleviate that pressure. How long do you typically find it takes for somebody to, if they did it the right way, they didn't just like leave tomorrow, but they really nurtured and coached their clients and then brought you in, and then there's like this merger happening, and then the handoff. How long of a duration do you see? Let me rephrase. How long of a duration would you recommend to be successful? And then
I
what do you
like,
actually see?
yeah, I like about 6 months of prep work. I mean, and
Hmm.
that's a lot of meeting, understanding each other's businesses. What I always did, if I had the opportunity, was go on a buyer listing consultation with the other person and have
Hmm.
them go with you so you can hear how they speak and how they communicate. Um, Spending that time of really digging into their client list and understanding them and having the opportunity to answer all those questions, bringing up scenarios, maybe doing a couple of transactions together so you can kind of see how things are going, and so I think, 6 months I feel is a good solid amount of time to really dig in and understand.
Hmm.
Now, if the agent is transitioning out, say they're retiring, they're traveling, moving away, whatever, I like to keep them involved for a year after, if they
Hmm.
are willing to do that. Now, I would take on all the responsibilities of the communication, really, expenses, those types of things. I just need them to be available to maybe talk once a month and also to do outreach if I need them to.
Mm. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Do you, how long are you connected to that agent? Meaning they're retiring out. Do they kind of retain them always as a client, and then there's the referral, or is there a time frame?
I think it's completely negotiable. So whatever both parties feel is fair.
Yeah.
Looking back on the acquisitions I did, they were all for 3 years and they were a
Mm.
sliding scale referral fee. So it was really each transaction that came. That way there was a little skin in the game too, that if you
Yeah.
stayed in touch and you did answer phone calls if they came through, or, you vetted that, the agent, if the client called and said, "Oh, what do you think about this person?" Then the referral fee got paid. And so that's all negotiable too. You decide what you want that split to look like. Um, and so I think as I've talked to other agents around the country that are interested in retiring, they're like, "Oh, I would never want to do that for 3 years. It took me 20 years to build this business." Well, then it doesn't have to be for 3 years. It could be for 5. It could be for 7. It could be for 10.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's really what you want, but I will say that the agents that I've worked with that did, move out of the business, had no qualms about 3 years. And then even after the 3 years were up, I still stay in touch with them. And let's say that someone from their book of business had called them first instead of calling me, then
Hmm.
I didn't do a good job on that transition that they should be calling me. So even
Interesting.
in year 8, if they call them first and then they have to send them my way, I'm gonna pay them a referral fee even though the agreement is officially finished.
I appreciate that ownership too, of acknowledging like something on the system wasn't done
That's
correctly,
right.
and it's an opportunity to grow and obviously tweak that.
Yes.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Like if they're obviously fielding the call, they're pushing it back to you. So there's yeah, you always take care of people, and they take care of you is the role.
That's it. And that's I think that's my whole life. I've always wanted to be seen as a good person with
Yeah.
goodwill who's fair, right? Because I do think will always come back to you if you do the right thing, and that's building trust too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, and I've done it more than once where we agreed upon some sort of split, and the whole deal took a completely different turn. And I'm like, you know what? It's not fair. You did way more work than we initially set out or expected. So let's kind of tweak it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you I want people to work with me again, and I want opportunities to come. And if you just come from a place of abundance, you're fine.
That's right.
So it sounds like it takes about 6 months to ideally to kind of get that handover or handoff to happen. How long does it take you to nurture that acquisition partner to get them on board with this whole concept and then sign the contract, if you will?
I think that could take time because I have to say from my experience, I was very lucky that everyone approached me, so I didn't have to
Hmm.
approach anyone to say, "Hey, I'd like to help you," right? Um, and I think it's because I did a good job for the first one, and then the other agents were watching and saw that, and the first acquisition, that agent who moved out of the town to a new market, she advocated for me, right? So when they
Amazing.
called and said, "Tell me how it went," she said, "Fabulous." And so it was kind of a no-brainer just to keep doing it, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I do think, the timing could vary for for any of these because it depends on how long it's going to take for that person to move out of the business for their exit. I've talked to
Sure.
people years ago who are like, "I'm thinking about this in the next 5 years." So why not just stay in touch and just talk about business, become mentors to each other, and the
Mhm.
relationship will
Mhm.
then turn into something that they wouldn't want to think of anyone else.
Yeah.
And I think you're learning from each other's experience by really just collaborating before it even happens. So I I would never do it with the intent of getting to know an agent just because I want their business. It's because I
Yeah.
admire their business and I really would sincerely like to help them.
Yeah. It's such a nice way to look at it. And I mean, and if that's the case, it's not for nothing, but you're viewing them like a client and you're nurturing the relationship as you would a buyer or seller. And over time, if you have established enough of a relationship, you've given enough of yourself, it's not a matter of if they're going to call you when they're ready. It's just now a matter of when. And it's a paradigm shift between chasing leads and opportunities versus attracting. And it's a very different mindset. It's a very different approach to the business and
But doesn't
to,
it feel better? It
oh,
feels
it feels
better to be
way better.
attracting it than to be chasing. And you're attracting because you're just being you, you know?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I would rather just put a goodwill, put a podcast out and try to help one agent out there and then to be on here just begging every week for referral opportunities or whatever it may be. Yeah, it feels way better to kind of sit in the seat of attraction versus not. When you, let's say, well, I won't even give it a time frame, but as you started acquiring these businesses, your business had to have hit some sort of terminal velocity and something I'm sure broke. I mean, it's just kind of inevitable. What what were some of the challenges that you saw as basically you're doubling your book of business each time you're taking it on because it's more projects, more people, more management, more. What were some of the breaking points that you discovered?
Well, I think it's very difficult to do it by yourself. So it's almost
Mm,
when you're thinking about it, it's like building a team, right?
sure.
The more business you have, you start to need help. And the first person you would want to hire is an admin, right? Because you need someone to help
Absolutely.
you with, say, the paperwork, the organization, so that you can go be with the people, right?
Mm,
Um, so I went from a part-time assistant to a director of operations who really ran everything in the background, and then
mhm,
a transaction coordinator from there. I
mhm.
did already have one agent on the team at that time, and so fortunate that in that first acquisition, I ended up acquiring an agent with it too, and
Oh,
she's
wow.
still with us. Um, and so I think that's a huge testament that, we still work together, right? So
Yeah.
she joined the team. So then we had two agents and a full-time director of ops and then a
Mm,
transaction coordinator. So then it became the point of, okay, our job was to care for the clients, be the face, and be the one that stays in touch with the people. So, that could have been events, quarterly calls, whatever outreach we could do. And we were trying to stay away from just emails, texts, right? It needed to be face to face or voice to voice because that has the most meaning.
yeah.
Um, and that was the hardest part because that's time consuming.
Yeah.
But that's how we build relationships is through that. So that was adding people who also had that same sense of loving on their clients and wanting to talk to
Mm,
them and hear the joys and things that were going on in their lives, and were willing to make those phone calls and get to know them because they may end up working with them down the road. So we would really rotate through this now much larger database of clients and call them, and it might be to call them to invite them to something we were having or just to check in or
yeah.
whatever it might be. Um, so I would say that was probably the biggest roadblock is just bodies, right? The pe the people to take care of the people. So you were, trying to build on your team as you were adding more people to work with.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it gets cumbersome really
Yeah.
quick. And I
And
I love
we're not trained in human resources, right? So, then you're
no
starting team building, hiring, building standards, all of those things. Yeah.
management HR.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I remember hearing years ago for entrepreneurs is if you're doing the same job you were doing last year, you're not growing. And so with that, if you're growing, you're constantly in this new role of a whole different set of things that you're trying to figure out while maintaining these relationships with your clients. But I want to go back and call attention to the one thing that you said. I really deeply appreciate that you said you get away from texts because they're so valueless at this point. It's, it'd be like on your birthday, your mom shooting you a text, "Hey, happy birthday." He'd be like, "That's weird." Right? But you know, if they made an appointment with you and said, "Hey, I know you're busy on your birthday with your family, but I would love to take you to dinner or love to grab a coffee with you. And I would love to just hear, your highlights of the past year or what you did to celebrate." It's such a different experience, but cutting corners for in this business, it's going to kill you. It'll just
I
it's
would
bad.
say probably since the pandemic, I feel like people during that time, people hid behind screens and their
Yeah.
phones, right? And it's getting back into, we've got to be back in front of the people that we've worked with and that
Yeah.
we've cared for. Um, they need to hear your voice and they need to see you. And I think
Yeah.
that's telling them you care is when you pick up the phone. And I'll be honest, a lot of people don't answer their phone, but you leave a voicemail, right?
Yeah.
And at least they know that you were thinking about them and that you
Yeah.
cared. And then if they can call you back later, great, you connect then.
Yeah. I think that's the other thing that I found through that experience is just because they're not responding, which is fine, it doesn't mean they're not receiving it
Yes.
and feeling it, because there is something really important. And we've all done it. You read a text and you're like, I can't believe they said that. And then you talk to them, and the what the spirit behind the text wasn't received the way it was supposed to be. There was a misalignment with the way they wrote it and the way you read it. And but when you hear somebody's voice and you hear the tone, the timbre, the cadence, the pauses in between the words, you're picking up their emotion behind it. You're picking up so many other cues. And then those cues get amplified when you're sitting in front of somebody and you can see their body language, and you can see when they smile and their face lights up in all three quadrants. It's a totally different experience. And so I that is, if nothing else, the most important part, I think, of this business, especially with AI. The only thing that's going to separate us in the future are relationships. Period.
Yes. And, going back to that is sitting in front of them or listening to the voice and the cadence and how people say things. That's why I said that when you are merging two businesses together, you need to hear how that other agent communicates with their clients and
Great point.
seeing that. I just
Yeah.
feel like being there and seeing it helps you understand much better how their business works.
Yeah, and I don't know why I just thought of this. There was a woman who I shadowed when I got into the business. Her name was Nancy Mazza, and unfortunately she passed away. But this sweet woman, she was older, but I remember I was working an open house with her, and this couple came in, and she was just like this old, sweet, kind person. And I can't remember what specifically was being said, but she like grabbed the woman's arm, like the lower forearm, and like looked her in her eye and asked her a question. But there was like such a beautiful connection there, and I was like, wow. I was blown away with how that experience just really connected and changed the dynamic of the conversation. And that would never have happened over text.
No. Yeah.
So I think it's brilliant, like sitting with these people that you're potentially going to partner with, and literally experiencing being a part of their process, and
That's
then
right.
gleaning that. And I'm sure within that, you sit with an agent who's been doing it for 30 years, you pick up a thing or two.
You really do. You learn from each other.
Yeah. Um, how many acquisitions to at this point have you done, and are you working on any more?
So I've done 3, and it's
Wow.
funny, it's been a while since I've acquired or helped someone else transition out of the business because I got to the point that I wanted to make sure that I was doing a good job caring for those clients that I had now what I call adopted, right? And then
Hmm.
also all the clients I had served years previously. That was almost 10 years of business myself before this all happened. And when I felt that, oh, this is getting to be a bit much to handle, I said, I've got to slow this down and I'm not going to take on any more because it wouldn't be fair. Um, but I feel like now I'm at a point that I could take on more clients to love on and take care of because
Yeah.
I feel like everything's solidified and having 3 other agents that are like-minded and care as much
Yeah.
as I do, and having our, director of ops and all of that in place that we're very, very organized,
Yeah.
um, makes me feel good about being able to keep moving forward.
What was happening when it didn't feel good or right to take on another acquisition?
Well, partly, I have 2 daughters who are now
Mm.
17 and 14.
Oh, goodness.
So, you know, it's family first, right? And
Of
so I
course.
needed to make sure that I wasn't always on the phone talking to clients and trying to build those relationships and not paying attention to my own daughters.
Good
So I
point.
had to take a step back and be like, "Wait a second, let's get these priorities back in order and how can I
Yeah.
balance this?" Right? Um, and I think once I was able to figure that out and they knew that mom is here for you, I'm not always on the phone with other people you don't know,
Yeah.
um, it became easier at that point. But I think that's the pull was it was pulling me too much. And the
Mm.
fact that I felt like I was letting something slip through because I couldn't be there for everyone all the time. So I'll tell you
Mm.
what I ended up doing. And I think this was probably 4 or 5 years ago. Lance Pendleton, who I still coach with, it was the whole good sphere thing of your
Mm.
A's, your B's, and your C's. Who are you spending your energy on? And you should be spending energy on everyone, but there are certain people you probably want to spend more energy and time
Sure.
and efforts on. And those are the people who love you and will always advocate for you so I was thinking about that, like, who are those clients who are my A clients that I'd have them over, I'd pick up the phone and talk to them about really about anything, right? Who
Yeah.
are my B clients that I've really enjoyed working with? And then who are the people who never respond? We've never heard from them, you know? So it was I varied the communication and really focused my phone calls on those A's and B clients. And then the C's would get a call here and there, but a lot of that was, more automated because they weren't responding back to me. We weren't building a relationship.
Yeah. That's a really smart. Lance is awesome. He's been on the podcast before. His total tangent, but when we look at the data of podcasting, we look at consumption. So I look at an episode, but I look at how long somebody actually listened. His is like 98%, which is a crazy number. Because he says really good hooks and then keeps you
And
engaged.
he'll drop some truth bombs on you too.
He totally will, and you're like, wait, what?" And but it like also like zigs and zags. Like he'll say something, and you're like, "Wait, what? That's not true." And then he like backfills it, but then it makes sense, and you're like, "Oh my god, that totally makes sense."
Yeah.
So you have let's say you have your A, B's, and C's, and I want to ask like a technical question because I do know agents have this weird apprehensive I did like this thing that's blocking them from picking up the phone and just saying hi to somebody. What's a script? What's your script?
I think it's when certain things are happening, like the school
Hmm.
year starts. I know which clients have children, and I call them and ask them how the school year is going. They know I have children, so then they ask me, and then I can get in the story about my senior who's applying for college, right? And then you're just having a really good, deep, meaningful conversation.
Yeah.
Um, so it's time of year. Certain things make it easier to call. And then the other thing is for those who are call reluctant, plan something. Do some sort of giveaway or something you want to do for your
Yeah.
clients and invite them. And then just a natural conversation can happen just from that, even if they can't
Yeah.
attend or be involved in what you're doing. I mean, it could even be something that you want to do to give back to the community and ask them if they want to join you.
There's a friend of mine, Audrey, who's in the East Bay, and she always does volunteer events, and I love it. And she'll call and send out newsletters revolving around that. Nothing to do with real estate. And that's also if I would love for somebody to go back and listen to that who has there's something pausing them from making those phone calls. You said nothing about hitting your clients over the head with real estate. Nothing.
That's the thing. What I dread is when you call someone and they say, "Oh, we're not moving anytime soon." And I'm like, "But that's not why I called. I didn't want you to. I was hoping that you loved your house and you weren't. But do you need like a vendor? Are you working on any projects? Like you could
Yeah.
bring that into it, but I don't ever want them to think I'm calling to be like, "Is it you've been in your house 5 years, is it time for you to move?" You know?
Yeah.
It's really just being someone that's there to help them, and gosh, if
Yeah.
you've spent that much time working with them, you should have some sort of friendship at that point,
Yeah.
right?
And you should know more about them than the type of counters they like.
That's right.
Like you have weird conversations. Like I've talked to my clients about all kinds of like based on their attire. I'm like, oh, did you guys just come from a round of golf? Yeah, we totally were playing over there. And like, oh, amazing. How was it? Blah blah blah. Have you been down there? And it's like you have these other conversations. You're right. It's funny. I guess I never thought of it or connected the dot, but I actually hate when I call somebody and I'm like, hey, just checking in or just seeing how XYZ or new restaurant opened up around the corner. And they're like, oh, and then they kind of weave in, yeah, we're super happy. We're not thinking about selling. And I'm like, that's not why I called. I don't care about that.
I know, and I think that's the gross part of it is somewhere along the way, the consumer or the client thinks that that's what it's a sales call, and it's
It's,
really it's a care call.
it is, and I think it's just cultural. It's not dissimilar from when you walk into a boutique and somebody says they even just say hi and your knee-jerk reaction is no,
I don't
just
need
looking.
anybody.
Like,
Right.
no, I'm just looking, thank you.
Yeah.
And they're like, I was just asking you about the weather. It, I think we're just that's just because we've been hit with it so many times. It's similarly is it's like when agents have sign up sheets at open houses, which I absolutely loathe. Like the first thing I think is great, you're gonna spam me. I'm not trading you my email for spam
Right.
because that's what people do. And so it's like unless we stop doing it, there's gonna be this like cultural expectation. But I think to your point, we can shift that by just being genuine and asking about them and
You know, that makes me think of a story of an agent that I met in New Jersey maybe a year or 2 ago, and she said that she never does a sign-in sheet at an open house and that
I never
somebody
do.
asked her, "Do you not need our name?" And she goes, "No, I don't need your contact info." And they actually hunted her down afterward. They ran into her at another open house like 6 months later, and they were like, "We've been looking for you because you were the first agent who didn't spam us or ask for all of our information." And she ended up being their real estate agent.
Do you know Julie Grace out of Connecticut?
No.
She's amazing. I love her to death, but she will not have a sign-in sheet. She also works with very high net worth individuals,
And they don't want to give their
and
information.
they do not want to give it up. And the other thing she does, which is amazing, is let's say somebody has a question about the house and she says, I'm happy to get you that answer. If you leave me your phone number, I just want you to know I will text you the answer and then I'm not going to save your name. I'm not going to store it and you'll never hear from me again. You'll never be added to a list. And that's it. Like she will capture their information for that one specific reason and then never talk to him again. And she's like, it's wild. But people will then call me and say, we want to work with you because that's the agent we want. But what's also really fascinating is with that client base, anonymity is incredibly important to them. And so she's showcasing the very thing that she does for her actual clients. So
That's all right.
it's brilliantly woven.
I know I just wrote her name down. I'm going to call her.
Oh, I I will text you and her. I'll make an introduction. She's amazing. She's definitely a great person to get to know. And that's what I love about this doing this podcast. And I get it, like we're on two different coasts right now, but I'm getting to sit with you for an hour and shoot the breeze and learn about your business and seeing your reactions, and then look for these opportunities of like, oh, so and so, and even that's how we met. Like we're both we have mutual friends in the business, and water
Right.
seeks its own level, and people share these opportunities. It's hilarious when Susie's of the few, but people will be like, "Oh, you'll have to meet so and so," and I usually put everybody through a vetting process with schedule 15 minutes, and I want to kind of get a sense of what they want to talk about on the podcast. And I try to figure out if they'd be a good fit or if the topic would be good. But when Susie introed us, I was like, here's the link, book it. I would love to chat with you.
Because you knew she's not going to steer you in the wrong direction.
No, she's such just an amazing woman. I love her. And so, yeah, exactly. And that parlays to if you have an amazing relationship with your clients and they're like, hey, I'm leaving the business, but I would love to introduce you to Jennifer. She's incredible. Her work ethic's similar to mine. It's done. They're like, all right, great. We're working with you.
That's exactly it.
Like that's case in point. So
Yes.
it's all about, I feel like I've shouted this one from the mountaintops, but it's all about relationships.
Yes.
It's all relationships in this business.
Absolutely. With a little bit of systems and processes behind it.
I mean, that's what
Yeah.
keeps everything moving forward. And the systems, if you again go back to the analogy of the restaurant, it keeps the cashier in the front engaging with clients. And when you have the systems in place, it gives you the freedom to have that your schedule cleared so you can sit down and make those calls or go to those lunches or throw that event. And without systems, you're just guessing at where stuff is all the time.
Yeah. And there's no organized way of staying in touch with people and getting everything else done.
It'll never happen. I mean, and to your point, as you made acquisitions, basically balls had to start dropping because you can't amplify your business that much and not have something else happen. And so you just plug that hole, create a new system for it, and then move to the next set of problems.
That's right.
What are you most excited for in the business? In your
You know,
business?
I think that as I near 20 years in the business and an empty nester in 4 years. Blah,
It'll happen
um,
fast.
oh,
It happens
I
so
know.
fast.
It's sad but exciting too. I think I'm really loving where my team is now. I would love to help more agents do what I've done. I think I've always had a teacher's heart
Mm,
of being able to help people share ideas, teach others, and just, collaborate and talking about things.
yeah.
I still have this inkling to expand in other regions too. I
Mm,
love the mountains of North Carolina. That's where I went to school. And we don't really have a big presence in the Boone Blowing Rock area. You have no idea where that is, but it's the
I
Blue
have
Ridge
no
Mountain.
idea where that is.
Yeah, it's the Blue Ridge Mountains. And a lot of people buy second homes there and vacation there.
Mm,
Um, and it's my second home, so I would love to be able to expand there down the road and be able to
yeah.
travel back and forth, working in Charlotte, working in the mountains.
I I think that's brilliant. I mean, figure out why not build a team in a feeder market? Like people are already going there. Your second home's there. You're already halfway there. I mean, I think it's such a smart move. I dream someday of spending more times in the mountains myself.
Yes. Yeah, it's my favorite place.
It's just such a nice recharge.
Yes.
Jennifer, this has been just so nice, and I appreciate your time and everything that you shared today.
Well, thank you again. I always feel energized after talking. Like sometimes you don't reflect back on your business and what you've done, or, it actually makes me want to start calling some of my clients today and just
I love
reach
it,
out and build some more connections, right?
and that's what it's about. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the bottom line.
right.
Thank you again. That is a
Thank
wrap.
you.